I used to think betrayal arrived like a lightning strike, sharp, sudden, impossible to miss. But in reality, it moves quietly. It brushes past you with a soft hand, convincing you it's just the wind. Then one morning, you turn around and see the storm has been building behind you for years. That's how my marriage felt, a weather system I didn't notice until it was already raining inside the house. When I met her, she looked at me the way people look at a window during winter, not because of what's outside, but because they want to feel something warm. I mistook that glance for affection. Later, I realized it was something else entirely: calculation. A quiet assessment. An emotional measuring tape. But back then, I was blind. Or maybe I just wanted to be. Our wedding was simple. Nothing extravagant, nothing dramatic. She said she wanted something intimate. Something about us. I believed her. I believed every word she ever said. My brother was my best man. He congratulated me with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. I thought he was jealous of my happiness. I never considered that he might be jealous of something else. From the moment we married, she settled into our home like she'd always lived there. She learned where I kept my tools, which side of the closet I preferred, how I took my coffee in the morning. She memorized my routines so well it was as if she'd rehearsed them. At the time, I thought it was love, this eagerness to adapt, to fit, to synchronize with my life. Now I understand she wasn't adjusting to me. She was adjusting to the cover. The earliest red flags were so subtle they felt like coincidences. She was always eager for family gatherings. She always encouraged me to invite my brother, even when I didn't see a reason for it. She'd ask if he was coming before she asked what time it started. And whenever he entered a room, something in her posture shifted. Only slightly, like an exhale she forgot to finish, but enough for someone who knew her as well as I did to notice. I tried to explain it away. Maybe she was just friendly. Maybe she wanted to get closer to my family. Maybe she was nervous and overcompensating. I told myself 1,000 versions of the same lie, hoping that if I repeated it enough times, it would become true. The truth is, she didn't love me. She loved the version of my life that my brother occupied, the energy he carried when he walked into a room, the confidence he radiated without trying, the way he soaked up attention without effort. I was the safe option, the steady one, the man who could offer her a respectable life. He was the chaos she craved. The contrast was almost poetic. I was the stability. He was the storm. And she wanted to stand in the rain without getting wet. The first time I saw something real, something undeniable, it was late at night. She had fallen asleep on the couch, her phone slipping from her hand. The screen lit up with a message preview. A nickname I'd never heard. A time I didn't recognize. A tone that didn't belong in our marriage. I didn't pick up the phone. I just stared at the notification until the screen went dark. My heart didn't break then. It just paused. She woke up moments later, confused, groggy, clutching the phone like it was oxygen. She erased the notification before she even looked at me. Then she leaned her head on my shoulder as if nothing had happened. That was when I realized she was good at this, hiding, covering, pretending. She hadn't made one mistake. She had made dozens. I just never caught them before. After that, I started noticing the details she thought were invisible. The text messages she answered too quickly. The sudden need to run errands. The shift in her laugh when my brother's name came up. The way she dressed whenever she knew he'd be around, subtle, polished, just enough to be noticeable without appearing intentional. She underestimated me. She thought loyalty made a man stupid. In a way, maybe it did. But the final confirmation came on a day that should have been ordinary. My brother had stopped by unannounced. He said he was in the neighborhood. She happened to be home. She happened to look perfect. And when I walked in from the kitchen carrying drinks, I saw something they didn't mean for me to see. It wasn't physical. It wasn't a touch. It wasn't a kiss. It was something worse, the look two people share when they're already guilty. The kind of look that carries a history. A language. A promise. A look that doesn't belong to strangers or family or friends. A look that belongs to lovers. I didn't say anything then. I didn't ask for explanations. I didn't confront them. I simply watched, memorizing the way their eyes flickered, the way their breathing changed, the way she straightened her posture like she had been caught standing in a place she shouldn't be. Later that evening, she hugged me as if she could erase what I'd seen. My brother texted me about some meaningless detail as if the entire afternoon had been normal. The two of them were synchronized in a way I never realized. Two halves of the same betrayal, beating to the same hidden rhythm. That night, lying next to her, I listened to her breathing. I wondered how many nights she'd fallen asleep thinking of someone else. Wondered how many lies she'd told without blinking. Wondered if she ever felt guilty, or if guilt was simply an emotion she learned to live without. I wasn't sure how to proceed. I wasn't sure how deep the betrayal went or how long it had been happening. But I knew one thing with absolute certainty. My wife hadn't married me to love me. She had married me to cheat on me, with my own brother. And I had finally opened my eyes to see the truth. Once you notice the first crack, you start seeing the whole structure differently. Walls you trusted suddenly look hollow. Floors you walked on for years feel unstable. And every sound you hear inside that home becomes suspicious, even the quiet ones. Especially the quiet ones. After that afternoon, the look they exchanged when they thought I wasn't watching, I began paying attention the way a man pays attention when he knows something is wrong in his own house. Not obsessively. Not desperately. Just, sharply. Like I had switched lenses and everything became clearer. It felt strange how quickly the pieces rearranged themselves. Her sudden interest in going to visit my parents. His sudden availability whenever she was free. Her phone lighting up at the exact moments he was online. I didn't need proof. The truth was already sitting in the space between their actions. But I wanted clarity. I wanted to understand the architecture of the betrayal, how it began, how it lived, and how far it had gone. I didn't snoop. I didn't go through her things. I simply observed. And it turns out, people who think they're clever often hide everything in the open. The first real sign came in her routines. My wife had always been predictable. Morning coffee. Yoga videos. Half-hearted attempts at cleaning. But suddenly her patterns shifted. She would shower at odd hours. She would put on makeup without leaving the house. She would linger near her phone like it was a fragile animal that needed constant guarding. Sometimes she'd step into another room to change clothes, even though she returned wearing the same outfit. It wasn't what she did that gave her away. It was what she tried not to do: make noise, attract attention, appear different. She was trying so hard to seem normal that every movement betrayed her. I realized that infidelity wasn't loud. It was quiet. It lived in the soft spaces between habits, in the pauses before explanations, in the way she held her breath when she sensed I might have noticed something. My brother was no better at hiding. He suddenly remembered my birthday 3 weeks early. He offered help with things he'd ignored for years. He sent messages at hours he'd never messaged me before. He acted like a man trying to build an alibi before anyone asked for one. What they didn't understand was that guilt makes people behave like actors who don't know which scene they're in. They overplay everything. They forget their lines. They rehearse emotions they never had to rehearse before. And when two guilty people try to synchronize, their timing becomes just slightly off, enough for someone watching closely to see the cracks. One evening, she said she wanted to rest early. She claimed she wasn't feeling well. She went to bed before sunset. I stayed in the living room, not making a sound, just letting the house breathe around me. Her phone buzzed 3 times in the bedroom. After each vibration, there was a pause, the kind a person makes when they lift their head from a pillow and reach for something they shouldn't be touching. I stayed where I was. I listened. I didn't confront her. I didn't walk in pretending to need something. I let her believe she was safe. People reveal the most when they think no one is watching. Later that night, I noticed something unusual. She had left her purse on the kitchen chair, something she never did. My wife adored that purse. She guarded it like it held fragments of her identity. But that evening, she abandoned it with a carelessness that didn't match her fear of being caught. I didn't touch it. I didn't need to. The fact she left it there told me more than anything inside it would've. Carelessness is not a natural state for a guilty person, unless they're distracted. Unless their thoughts are somewhere else. Or with someone else. Over the next week, her behavior intensified. She would flinch when I walked into the room. She would stare at herself in mirrors as if looking for cracks in her own disguise. She began over-explaining simple things, then abruptly stopped explaining anything at all. It was the behavior of someone living in 2 realities and sinking in both. Meanwhile, my brother became harder to read. He would avoid eye contact, then stare too long when he finally made it. He would change subjects abruptly whenever she came up. His laughter grew forced. His posture grew stiff. He had never been good at hiding emotions. And guilt, it seemed, was too heavy for him to carry elegantly. The moment that confirmed everything, without any words, messages, or evidence, came unexpectedly. One afternoon, I returned home earlier than usual. She didn't hear me come in. She was in the hallway, standing in front of the mirror. She wasn't fixing her hair or adjusting her clothes. She was smiling at a message on her phone, a soft, warm, private smile I had never seen directed at me. It wasn't the smile that hurt me. It was the gentleness in it. The softness. The way her shoulders relaxed, the way her eyes softened, the way her fingers curved around her phone like she was holding something precious. I watched her reflection quietly. She didn't know I was there. And in that moment, I realized something painfully simple. She had never looked at me with that softness. Not once. I didn't say anything. I simply backed away, silently, leaving her alone with her secret. A few hours later, she acted like nothing had happened. She moved around the house with forced cheerfulness, as if trying to erase the earlier moment from reality. She didn't know I'd seen her smile. She didn't know I'd witnessed the truth behind it. A person can fake passion. They can fake interest. They can fake loyalty. But they can't fake softness. Softness only lives where the heart does. As the days passed, I realized I wasn't angry, not yet. I was something else. Detached. Observant. Almost calm. Betrayal didn't ignite me. It cooled me. It sharpened me. They thought they were hiding a secret. But I was gathering a truth, one small, quiet piece at a time. I didn't know what I'd do with it yet. But I knew the time was coming when I would act. When I would stop watching and start responding. And when that moment arrived, neither of them would see it coming. There comes a moment in every betrayal when silence stops being protection and becomes confirmation. I had collected enough pieces to build an entire truth, but I still hadn't seen them together. I had hints, patterns, glances, changes, everything except the final thread that tied it all into something undeniable. The strange thing was, I didn't need more proof. I wasn't searching for answers anymore. I was searching for timing. And timing, it turns out, has a way of choosing itself. It began on a night that was supposed to be ordinary. She told me she wanted space to read, which was ironic considering she hadn't read a full book in months. She went to the bedroom earlier than usual, claiming exhaustion. Her exit was too quick, too stiff, too rehearsed. She left her glass half full on the table, something she never did. My wife was many things, but careless wasn't one of them unless she was in a hurry. Or nervous. Or focused on something she didn't want me to see. I stayed in the living room with the lights off, letting the house settle around me. I didn't make a sound. I didn't move. I didn't even breathe loudly. When you want the truth, sometimes you have to vanish inside your own home. After a few minutes, I heard the faint rustle of sheets, then the soft, distinct rhythm of her typing. Not scrolling, typing. Slow, controlled, intentional. The way someone writes when they're crafting something personal. Then I heard the short bursts of air she always exhaled when she read something that made her happy. A sound so small most people would miss it. But I didn't. The room stayed dark. I stayed still. And her phone kept lighting up the same way it had been lighting up for weeks, urgent, rhythmic, expectant. My brother wasn't home that evening. I knew because he had posted earlier that he was working late. It was a lie, of course. I'd learned that everything he did these days had two versions, the one he showed the world and the one he shared with her. The house felt too quiet. Not peaceful, but suspended. Like the air was waiting for something to break. Around midnight, she left the bedroom. She moved softly, like she was trying not to wake someone who wasn't even in the room with her. She tiptoed past the hallway, not realizing I was already awake and watching the silhouette of her shadow glide across the floor. She grabbed her keys from the counter with a slowness that betrayed guilt. She picked them up one at a time, as if each piece of metal could expose her. Then she did something small but revealing. She checked her appearance in the black reflection of the turned-off microwave door. Not a quick glance. A full assessment. She pulled her hair forward. She adjusted her sweater. She tilted her head slightly, the way she did when she wanted to look casual but perfect. Women don't do that before driving to the pharmacy or going out for fresh air. They do it when they're going to see someone. Someone specific. When she left the house, I didn't follow her immediately. The truth wasn't going anywhere. Instead, I waited. I counted to 100 slowly, letting the coldness in my chest settle into something steady. Then I walked out and started the car, keeping my lights off until I was far enough not to be seen. She drove with the confidence of someone taking a route she'd taken before, left turn, long stretch, another right. No uncertainty. No hesitation. And then she arrived exactly where I expected she would. My brother's building. She didn't park far away to avoid suspicion. She didn't try to hide the car in shadow. She parked directly in front, like this had become routine. Like she didn't fear being seen because she had convinced herself I was oblivious. She stepped out of the car with purpose. And then something happened that I wasn't prepared for, even though I should have been. My brother opened the door before she even reached it. He had been waiting. He didn't look surprised. He didn't look conflicted. He didn't even pretend. He just stepped back to let her in, the way you let someone into a place they already belong. She walked past him without pausing, without checking the street, without looking over her shoulder. She didn't even consider the possibility of consequences. And he closed the door behind them with the familiarity of a man who had closed that same door many times before. For a few seconds, I sat in the darkness of my car, watching the building as if watching the truth materialize in real time. I felt something shift inside me, not pain, not rage, not shock. Something colder. Something cleaner. A clarity that doesn't come from understanding, but from acceptance. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a lapse in judgment. It was deliberate. Practiced. Intentional. She hadn't fallen into betrayal, she had walked into it willingly. And he hadn't been tempted into it, he had prepared for it. They belonged to each other, not in love, but in the same darkness. I didn't go inside. I didn't knock. I didn't make a scene. Confrontation isn't justice, it's noise. And noise is what guilty people expect. Silence is what destroys them. I drove home, parked, and entered the house they believed I didn't see collapsing. Everything looked the same, but it felt different, heavier, sharper. Her absence didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like space clearing for the truth. I sat on the edge of the bed she had left warm. The sheets still carried her shape. Her pillow still held the ghost of her perfume. There was something disturbingly poetic about sitting in the imprint of someone who had just left to be with someone else. I stayed awake until dawn, not out of pain but deliberation. I wasn't thinking about her. Or him. I was thinking about myself, about the kind of man I refused to become. I wouldn't scream. I wouldn't beg. I wouldn't ask why. I would let them reveal themselves fully. And when they did, I would act. But not with anger. With precision. By the time I heard her footsteps returning hours later, I already knew exactly what the end would look like. And it wouldn't be loud. It wouldn't be messy. It would be silent. Silent enough that both of them would feel it for years. When people think about revenge, they imagine fire. Explosions. Confrontations that shake walls. But the real kind, the kind that lasts, is quiet. It rearranges a person's life without raising its voice. It doesn't strike like a storm, it drains like a drought. Slowly. Invisibly. Completely. By the morning after I followed her to my brother's building, I knew my marriage was already over. What remained wasn't a relationship, it was a shell. And shells stand upright for a long time before collapsing. My job now was to stop holding it up. She came home before sunrise. Not tiptoeing, not unsteady, not guilty in the theatrical way cheaters imagine themselves. Just calm. Too calm. The calmness of someone who thinks she controls the narrative. She walked through the house like nothing had shifted. Like the world outside our door didn't exist. Like my brother's hands weren't still metaphorically on her skin. But something had shifted. Not in her, in me. I didn't confront her. I didn't ask where she'd been. I let her speak first, indirectly, casually, carelessly. The way people do when they think they're untouchable. The story she told about her evening didn't matter. The lies didn't matter. What mattered was the confidence with which she delivered them. That confidence told me one thing: they believed they were safe. People who feel safe are easy to dismantle. For the next 2 weeks, I did something simple: nothing. Absolute nothing. I didn't check her phone. I didn't watch her movements. I didn't bring up my brother's name. I didn't ask questions. I gave her a world without suspicion. A world where she believed she was succeeding. A world where betrayal could breathe freely. And in that world, she made mistakes. She grew comfortable. She grew careless. She stopped hiding her soft expression when her phone lit up. She left the house more often under flimsy excuses. She stopped pretending for my benefit. My silence made her brave. Her bravery exposed everything. Meanwhile, I worked quietly behind her back, but not the way she did behind mine. I wasn't seeking intimacy. I was preparing exits. I separated finances. I updated documentation. I spoke to a lawyer without leaving a trace she would notice. I arranged copies of messages she didn't know I had seen. Not screenshots, those can be altered. I used timestamps, logs, metadata. Things no guilty person imagines a quiet man would know how to obtain. I didn't gather these things for court. I gathered them for them. The day I chose to act wasn't dramatic. It was strategic. My brother had invited my parents to his home for dinner, a gesture he hadn't made in years. My wife insisted we go. She said it would bring the family closer. I understood then what she wanted: to normalize the three of us. To weave herself into the space between us until no one could tell where loyalty belonged. She thought proximity was camouflage. I let her choose the setting of her own undoing. When we arrived, everything looked painfully ordinary. My parents sitting comfortably, my brother pretending nothing had changed, my wife entering with the composure of someone stepping into a story she believed she had authored. And then I did something very simple. I greeted everyone calmly. I sat at the table. I poured myself a drink. And while the room buzzed with small talk, I placed a small envelope on the table in front of my brother. Then a second one in front of her. Not dramatically. Not accusingly. Not theatrically. Just placed. The gesture was so quiet it cut through every sound in the room. They both froze. Their faces changed before they even touched the envelopes. Some truths have a physical presence, you can feel them pressing against your skin before you uncover them. My mother asked what it was. I said it was clarity. Nothing more. Inside each envelope was the same thing, a printed timeline of their messages, their meetings, their calls, their patterns. Not photos. Not accusations. Just data, unemotional, undeniable, irrefutable. I didn't add commentary. I didn't explain a single line. I let the truth speak in the sterile language of timestamps. My brother reacted first. His hands trembled. The color drained from his face. He looked like a man who had just been invited to his own funeral. My wife stayed still. She didn't gasp. She didn't cry. She didn't speak. She stared at the paper as if staring at a version of herself she didn't recognize, the version she hid behind perfumes and excuses. She realized in that moment that everything she thought she controlled had been slipping through her fingers for months. My father pushed his chair back slowly, like someone rising from a table that suddenly felt contaminated. My mother covered her mouth with both hands, not out of melodrama, but out of the fraction of a second realization that her sons had become strangers to each other. The entire room shifted, not loudly, but definitively. And I didn't say a single word. I wasn't there to fight. I wasn't there to debate. I wasn't there to punish. I was there to end something. When the silence grew heavy, I stood up. Calm. Steady. Cold. I placed my wedding ring on the table, not tossed, not slammed, simply set down with the same quiet finality I had used the night I followed her car. Then I told them something simple, without raising my voice, without anger, without emphasis. That I was done. Not with a scene. Not with insults. Not with explanations. Just done. My brother tried to speak. His voice cracked. My wife opened her mouth but no sound came out. Betrayers often imagine they'll have the right words ready for the confrontation, but they forget something important. Betrayal makes people fluent in lies, not in consequences. I left the house without waiting. I didn't look back. I didn't let anyone follow. When I returned to my own home, it felt different, empty, yes, but also clean. A space no longer polluted by secrets. A place reclaimed. The next day, she came home to pack. She cried without crying, the way guilty people do when they're grieving the loss of the version of themselves they pretend to be. My brother tried to call. I didn't answer. There was nothing left to say. In the weeks that followed, they fell apart. Not because I destroyed them, but because without my silence holding their illusion together, they had nothing to hide behind. Betrayal is a partnership until the truth arrives. Then it becomes a mutual collapse. And collapse, as I learned, is infinitely more powerful than revenge. Because I didn't ruin their lives.